So the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus has been out for a couple of months now actually, and I didn't do a full review on it. Now it's time to actually go and do a full review on it, so let's go ahead and take a look. Now, the S21 Plus, believe it or not, has already went down in value quite a bit. So at first it was selling for $9.99 or something like that. Now it's $7.99 on Amazon. So if you want to pick it up, you can get it from the link down below and help support the channel at the same time. And it's crazy that this phone has already gone down this much. Like, it's super crazy. Now, this is kind of what I'll tell you about this phone. I think this device is probably one of the best phones you can pick up so far in 2021. And ultimately, I think even at the end of this year, it's going to be one of those phones that I'm going to talk about like crazy, because it's such a solid phone. But the thing is, this phone is going to be so underrated this whole entire year. You look at the S20 Plus of last year, a very solid phone that went down in value like crazy and was able to be picked up for like less than $600, which is almost like half the price in the same year. Unfortunately, it's overshadowed by phones like the S20 Ultra with the iPhone 12 Pro Max or the leaks of other phones, and rightfully so. Like, if Samsung doesn't do a good job at marketing it, nobody's going to buy it. And this phone is probably almost a perfect phone. There's some areas where it really messes up at, but I think this is like a 9.5 out of 10 at least for this type of year of a phone. And the fact that it's already went down in value is crazy to me. Now, that display on the front was one of those displays that still looks so beautiful. It's a 6.7 inch panel. It's 1080p, which is a downgrade from last year, but it's still a 120 hertz panel, and it still looks extremely premium. This is not a cheap feeling phone. This is not a cheap looking phone. This is a very premium panel still. With that 120 hertz panel and with that hole punch display, it really does not get that much better than this. Like, yes, you can go and get, maybe an S20 Ultra or something, but this panel is still a really good panel with the fingerprint sensor in the display. Like, the panel is not one of those things I'll complain about. Maybe when it first came out, I was kind of hesitant, but since then I love it, and I still think it's a very solid panel for sure. Now, USB Type-C on the bottom is still great. Samsung DeX, which is awesome. You still have IP certification on this phone, which is great. And flipping it on the back, this was still one of my favorite improvements from the predecessor to the new one. So last year with the S20 Plus, I complained about it a lot because it just kind of looked ugly on the back. Other than that, that phone was perfect. This phone improved the back. So it did lack the microSD card slot, which is so annoying, but it did improve the look of this phone. So when I look at the back of my S21 Plus, and then I look at the back of my iPhone 12 Pro, I kind of see some similarities, and there are some reasons why I might like an S21 Plus more. And I really do think the S21 Plus visually changed the most, in my opinion, and I think that's a humongous improvement with it for sure. Now, the triple camera setup on the back still looks great, and overall the feeling of this phone is top tier. It still feels so good. I have very little complaint to complain about this on the body side of things, and I really do think the feeling of this phone is one of its biggest assets. There definitely are some problems, like the lack of the microSD card slot. I think that was the dumbest thing Samsung did, because they sell microSD card slots, so they could have made money both ways. But I don't even think they have a big cloud architecture either, so I don't know what they're trying to sell us for. But regardless, I think this phone's body and the features that it has is still top tier. And as I mentioned before, hopefully Samsung keeps their Note lineup, and I hope they don't phase that out. I really like that lineup a lot. So in terms of the body standpoint, thumbs up for sure. Now, camera-wise, this is a big one. So this is what I'll tell you. This camera is perfect. You have that triple camera threat. You have the wide telephoto and ultra-wide sensor. Now, comparing it side by side to the 12 Pros and all these, I've already done a bunch of camera comparisons. I can tell you that at this caliber, at this rate, you are going to find such small differences from each camera that there's not even any point in doing camera comparisons probably in the next 5 years, to be honest. You have 4K at 60, you have 8K. One UI 2.5 brought so many cool features for their, specific camera, softwares. And then when you look at this specific lens, and with One UI 3, it's really improved a lot of those specific little features. And for sure, those features in and of itself were a hot topic, a couple months ago when it came out. And there's still so many improvements that specific software has. And as much as I don't like One UI 3, their camera modules and their camera features are huge assets for their whole entire software. That's a pretty big advancement and a pretty big improvement that Samsung's done for their cameras. Now, continuing on, what I'll tell you is that the pictures this thing takes, the videos this thing takes are top tier. They are very good quality. Are they better than the 12 Pro? Are they not? It just really depends, I guess. But I really do like the quality of these photos. Now, I will tell you, the UI is still a little glitchy. As many features as it has, it is a little bit glitchy here and there. So if you try to take a photo and you shake it a little bit, it's just like kind of finicky, but I still like the camera and I think it's very solid. Now the front camera is still extremely good. It's a single 10 megapixel sensor, 4K 60 on the lens too, and I love this camera lens. I will tell you, the number one thing I hate about the front of these Android lenses, I will never understand it with apps like Instagram, Snapchat, so on and so forth. They just are so bad for their front cameras. You know, their back cameras are still fine. It feels like Snapchat improved their whole entire thing for the back camera, but the front camera, when I use it, it's so glitchy, it looks so ugly, it's so unbelievable that a manufacturer as big as Snapchat would not even improve the front camera quality. But other than that, on the stock apps, great camera quality on the front and the back. I still think front cameras are better on iPhones, but this back camera is still very solid for sure. So in terms of cameras, thumbs up for me. Now again, one of the better aspects of this phone, I would say, is the software. It's still not perfect, but Samsung has made improvements. So last year they increased their lifespan to an extra year. But on top of that, just recently, a couple weeks ago, they actually improved their security updates. So now it's getting an extra year of security updates. So it's getting 3 full years of OS support and then 4 years of security updates. So it's really lasting 4 years if you think about it. And I think that's a really awesome thing that, Samsung has done. Now, is it perfect? No. Their software longevity has improved, but their software itself still isn't that great. And that is one of my bigger problems, as I mentioned before, time and time again, with Samsung. If you could give me a Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus, but it has, the stock software experience, that is the best thing. That is the biggest gift anybody could give for an Android device. When it comes down to this thing, I think it's a great, thing that Samsung is doing is improving their lifespan, but the software itself needs improvement. On the flip side though, a huge asset for the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus is the battery life. This thing has a 4800 mAh battery inside of it. That is a massive size battery. Remember, just a couple years ago, our battery banks weren't even this size. Nowadays, our phones are this. And not only does it have wireless charging, but it has reverse wireless charging as well. So you could theoretically charge, like if your phone was at like 50%, theoretically, okay, this isn't probably how it works, but you could charge up almost an iPhone 12 all the way and still have 50% on your phone. So let's say your Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus, it was at 100%. You could charge your iPhone 12 on the back of this thing and theoretically still have over 50% or something like that. I really don't even know, but somewhere around 50%, 40%. And that's a really awesome thing that you have going with this phone. And I'll tell you this, and I'll continue to say it, Samsungs have really good battery life for a lot of their phones. Even I remember with the S10e not that long ago, that thing had killer battery life, and this is no exception. So I would definitely say the battery life on the Galaxy S21 Plus is very good. Now, hitting it off with the performance, I mean, what do you guys want from me? This is an amazing phone in terms of performance. It has literally the latest chipset, so Qualcomm Snapdragon 888, the Adreno 660 GPU, and 8 gigs of RAM on the two models. So there's two different models. I wouldn't recommend buying the 128 gig model unless you really have to, but I'll tell you this, okay? I think the RAM is really the only thing that this phone needs an improvement on. It's plenty fast. It's plenty, performance heavy. It still can do everything you throw at it. The only unfortunate thing about this phone is pretty much the lack of like a 12 gig of RAM option. I'm pretty sure the S20 Plus last year had a 12 gig of RAM option. Maybe it didn't, but I feel like that should have been something that this phone had, especially when you look at the S21, just a standard model, that had already 8 gigs of RAM. So this one should have been better than that. And unfortunately, it really isn't. You're going to be getting pretty much the same type of performance from this phone as you are on the Galaxy S21. Is it a big deal? I don't know. Like, again, you're spending more money, so you should be getting more in every category. But I will tell you, in terms of the performance on the S21 Plus, it is a great performing phone. You are not going to feel like it's bad. You're not going to feel like it's slow. And I just think, no matter what you're going to do with this phone, it's going to be solid. It's not going to be perfect. I think the S20 Ultra is a really good improvement in terms of performance because you can spec that phone up, I think, to 12 gigs of RAM and maybe even more. Maybe I'm not even remembering it, properly, but you have the ability of speccing that out a little bit more. And I think that's a very important thing. When you have a device like this, as I mentioned time and time again, it's very good to have a device that can be as future-proofed as possible. And the performance of this phone is top tier. The RAM is the only thing I have a complaint about, but other than that, this phone is pretty much perfect. So to kind of sum up this video, I'd say it's the question, should you buy a Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus? Like, is this phone even worth it to buy and spend $1,000 or $800 if you get them from the link down below? Well, this is what I'll tell you. I think the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus, after using it for like a couple months or whatever, it is a solid phone. And to give you perspective, I didn't use this thing full time. Obviously, I use an iPhone full time, but this phone, on a performance standpoint, was very solid. You know, there was nothing that I could complain about this phone that I haven't already complained about basically every other Samsung phone. This specific device is pretty much perfect. There's still some workarounds that, I wish Samsung improved at, but the software is really my main complaint. There were things I complained about before, like the display not being, as good as the predecessor, but I really don't think that's that big of a deal. I think this phone's performance is great. I think this phone's display is still really good. I think the 120 hertz is still amazing. Thank God they didn't remove that. The camera setup on this thing is perfect. The front camera, I wish it got an improvement in some apps, but that's not a Samsung issue. That's just like an Android and Snapchat and Instagram issue. You have very amazing battery life on this phone. This thing's going to last you all day. You have reverse wireless charging, which is awesome. I think my only other complaint is probably in the RAM segment. I wish it did have a little bit of an improvement in the RAM side. I wish it had maybe like 12 gigs of RAM for the main big option. Unfortunately, both options are only 8 gigs of RAM, and I think that is kind of small in this day and age. But I do think for day-to-day tasks, this phone's performance is great. The battery life is great. The camera is great. I just think it's an overall a really, really good phone. And it makes me even more happy to see, or more excited to see, what Samsung's going to do for their Note lineup this year, as well as hopefully, their Note lineup of Note 20, as well as their S lineup of next year. Like, how much better can they do on top of this? This is probably like a 9.5 out of 10. There are really big annoyances, like the software not being that great, the micro SD card slot not being there, but I think overall this is a very good Android phone. It's probably going to be one of the best phones this year. Unfortunately, nobody's probably going to buy it because it's going to be overshadowed by the S21 or the S21 Ultra and probably the iPhones, as I mentioned before. But this is a solid phone, and I would highly recommend you guys, if you want it, go for it. I would probably recommend buying it. So that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.